Hi guys. Tonight, we are going to drift back through the centuries, leaving behind the hum of the modern world to find ourselves within the thick, silent stone walls of a medieval castle. It is a place of shadows and flickering light, where the air smells of wood smoke and old wool. We often imagine these great fortresses as cold, inhospitable places, and indeed, the stone is unforgiving, but tonight, we will explore the ingenious and cozy ways our ancestors found warmth and sanctuary in the heart of winter. We will follow the fading light as it retreats from the high battlements, watching how a household prepares for the long, quiet, dark, and discover how, despite the bitter chill of a world without electricity, one could find a deep and restorative sleep. The sun is beginning its slow descent behind the jagged silhouette of the distant forest, casting long amber fingers across the courtyard of the keep. Here, within the great ring of the curtain wall, the bustle of the day is softening into a rhythmic, steady quiet. The sharpening of blades, the shouting of stable hands, and the clatter of iron-shod hooves have all begun to fade, replaced by the soft lowing of cattle being ushered into their pens, and the distant, muffled chime of a vesper bell from the chapel. You can feel the temperature dropping as the golden light turns to a bruised purple, and the massive limestone walls, which have soaked up what little warmth the winter sun offered, begin to radiate a deep, ancient cold. This cold is not sharp like a breeze. It is heavy and patient, a stillness that seems to emanate from the very earth itself, rising through the foundations and settling into every corner of the great hall. As you step through the heavy oak doors, the air changes. It is thicker here, scented with the musk of floor, rushes dried herbs like lavender and meadowsweet that have been strewn across the stone to provide a small measure of insulation and a pleasant fragrance. Underfoot, the great hall is a cavern of shifting shadows. High above, the timber roof remains hidden in the gloom, while down below, the massive hearth at the center of the room crackles with the steady consumption of thick oak logs. The flames dance in rhythmic pulses, throwing orange light against the tapestries that line the walls. These are not merely for decoration. They are heavy, woven barriers, hanging several inches away from the stone to create a pocket of still air. They act as a skin for the room, softening the harshness of the masonry and dampening the sound of the wind that whistles through the high, narrow arrow slits. You watch as the servants move with a slow, practiced grace, banking the fires for the night. There is no hurry here. The evening is a long, unfolding process. In the center of the hall, the lord and his kin sit for a final, warming draught of spiced ale or cider, the steam rising in delicate curls from their pewter tankards. The warmth of the drink spreads through their limbs, a small internal fire to match the one on the hearth. They speak in low tones, their voices hushed by the vastness of the space. There is a profound sense of communal safety within these walls. Outside, the world is vast, dark, and wild, but here, protected by 12 feet of solid stone and the shared presence of one's household, there is a sanctuary. The emotional weight of the night is not one of fear, but of a quiet, reflective closing of the circle. Now, the transition toward the private chambers begins. You ascend a narrow, winding spiral staircase, your hand trailing along the cold, damp stone of the central pillar. Each step is a deliberate movement into a quieter, more intimate part of the castle. The air here is thinner and sharper, but as you reach the private withdrawing room, you find another fire burning brightly. This is a smaller, more controlled heat. The windows here are covered not with glass, but with thick shutters of seasoned oak, bolted tight against the night air. Over these, heavy wool curtains have been drawn, creating a room within a room. The architecture of the castle is designed to withstand siege, but the architecture of the sleep within is designed to create a cocoon of softness amidst the hardness of the world. In the corner of the room stands the bed, a massive structure of carved wood, raised high off the floor to escape the drafts that snake across the stones. It is a world unto itself. This is the four-poster bed in its truest form, featuring a heavy wooden canopy and thick velvet hangings that are currently pulled wide to allow the warmth of the fire to soak into the linens. The mattress is not a single entity, but a layering of comforts. A base of sturdy straw to provide form, followed by a thick tick filled with the softest down feathers. To look at it is to see a landscape of softness, a destination for the weary body that has spent the day clad in heavy mail or stiff wool. The preparation for sleep is a ritual of stripping away the outer layers of the world, shedding the weight of status and duty to return to the simple, vulnerable state of being, as the fire in the solar begins to settle into a glowing bed of embers. The final preparations are made. A large copper pan, filled with hot coals from the hearth, is slid between the linen sheets. It moves back and forth, chasing away the dampness and the chill, leaving behind a trail of dry, radiating warmth. The sheets themselves are made of heavy sun-bleached linen, while the blankets are of thick, boiled wool, heavy enough to press down on the body with a comforting weight. There is a psychological comfort in this weight. It feels like a physical manifestation of security, a shield against the invisible reach of the winter night. The person preparing for bed dons a long linen chemise, and perhaps a coifa simple linen cap, to keep the heat from escaping through the head, for the air in the room will eventually grow cold as the fire dies down. You climb into the bed, and the sensation is immediate, a sudden, enveloping heat that seems to hold you. The curtains are drawn closed, one by one, until you are encased in a small, private tent of fabric. Inside this enclosure, the breath of the sleeper creates a microclimate, warming the small volume of air until it is as temperate as a summer afternoon. The stone walls of the castle may be freezing, and the wind may howl through the battlements far above, but here, within the velvet and the wool, time seems to stop. You can hear the rhythmic ticking of the dying fire, the occasional pop of a cooling ember, and the soft, distant rustle of the wind, but they feel miles away. The mind, too, begins to settle, shedding the anxieties of the harvest or the defense of the realm, folding inward like the petals of a flower at dusk. The darkness inside the bed curtains is absolute and velvety. It is a darkness that invites the eyes to close and the muscles to unspring. There is no blue light here, no artificial hymnody, the deep, natural rhythm of the earth. You think of the layers of protection surrounding you, the wool blankets, the linen sheets, the wooden bed frame, the heavy curtains, the tapestries on the walls, and finally, the immense, silent stones of the castle itself. You are at the very heart of a great, silent machine designed to keep the cold at bay. The cold is not an enemy to be fought, but a presence to be respected. A force that makes the warmth of the bed feel like a profound gift, as the embers in the hearth fade from bright orange to a dull, pulsing red. The silence of the castle deepens, becoming a heavy, velvet blanket of its own. In the great hall below, the hounds have curled up near the ashes of the main fire, their tails tucked over their noses. The guards on the ramparts are wrapped in heavy cloaks of fur and wool, their footsteps rhythmic and slow as they pace the stone walks. But their presence only adds to the sense of peace within the keep. They are the watchers, allowing those inside to surrender completely to the night. You feel your own breath slowing, matching the slow pulse of the castle. The air you breathe is cool and crisp on your face, but your body is a core of steady, radiating heat. This contrast is the essence of medieval comfort, the sharp edge of the winter air, making the softness of the bed feel infinitely more precious as you drift closer to the edge of sleep. The history of this place seems to vibrate in the silence. Generations of people have sought this same refuge, finding the same solace in the weight of the blankets and the security of the walls. There is a timelessness to this feeling, a bridge across the centuries built of wool, wood, and stone. The castle is not a cold monument. Tonight, it is a living, breathing protector. The shadows on the ceiling of your curtained world shift slowly as the last of the firelight vanishes, leaving only the soft, gray light of the moon filtering through the high windows and the cracks in the shutters. It is a gentle light, a silent light, that guides you finally into the deep, dreamless dark. The world outside is frozen now. The puddles in the courtyard have turned to glass, and a fine rime of frost coats the iron gate of the portcullis. The trees in the forest are stiff and silent under the stars. But here, in the heart of the keep, the heat remains. It is held within the feathers, within the wool, and within the very bones of the sleepers. There is no need for anything more. The simple sufficiency of the fire, the fabric, and the fellowship of the household is enough to turn the harshest winter into a season of rest. You sink deeper into the mattress, the weight of the blankets feeling like a gentle hand pressing you down into the earth, into the quiet, into the past. We are going to settle deeper into the quietude of our medieval sanctuary, moving away from the dying embers of the hearth and toward the very heart of the chamber's comfort. We have watched the sun set over the battlements and felt the heavy, ancient cold of the stone walls begin to assert itself. But now, we turn our attention to the clever and tactile ways our ancestors built a world of warmth within the chill. As we stand in the center of the solar, the flickering light of a single tallow candle casts long, dancing shadows across the floor, and our eyes are drawn to the great wooden structure that promises a night of deep, undisturbed rest. This is not merely a place to lie down. It is a masterpiece of craftsmanship and layering, a fortress of softness designed to cradle the body and protect the spirit from the long, dark hours of the winter night. The bed itself is a grand, architectural presence, a frame of heavy, seasoned oak that seems to have grown out of the floorboards themselves. If you reach out and run your fingers along the wood, you can feel the slow, deliberate work of the carpenters chiseled the smooth, oiled surfaces and the intricate carvings of vines and heraldic beasts that wind their way up the four massive posts. This wood carries the faint, resinous scent of the deep forest, a lingering memory of the great trees that stood for centuries before being brought within these walls. The frame is raised high, held aloft on sturdy legs to create a pocket of air between the sleeper and the cold, damp stone of the floor. There is a profound sense of stability in this wood. It does not creak or complain, but stands as a silent guardian, a boundary between the vulnerability of sleep and the vast, echoing space of the castle. Beneath the many layers of textiles, the foundation of this comfort begins with the rustling, earthy song of the straw mattress or the palliasse. This is no ordinary straw, but the finest stalks of wheat or rye, harvested in the height of the golden summer and dried until they are brittle and sweet. As you press your hand down into the bed, you hear that distinctive, papery, sigh-soft, dry crunching sound that speaks of sun-drenched fields and the rhythmic swing of the scythe. The straw is packed tightly into a heavy hempen sack, providing a firm yet yielding base that conforms slowly to the weight of the body. It carries with it the faint aroma of the barn and the harvest, a rustic, grounding scent that reminds the sleeper of the earth's bounty, even as the frost gathers on the window shutters outside. There is something deeply peaceful about this sound, a rhythmic rustle that settles into a quiet hush as the straw finds its place, creating a stable landscape upon which the softer layers can rest. Resting atop the straw is a second mattress, a thick tick filled with the lightness of 1,000 clouds. This is the feather bed, the ultimate luxury of the medieval household. It is stuffed with the softest down and feathers gathered from the geese and ducks that roam the castle grounds, each one hand-picked for its ability to trap and hold the warmth of the body. When you lay upon it, the sensation is one of immediate surrender. The mattress does not push back, but rises up to meet you, enveloping your limbs in a billowing, weightless embrace. It feels as though the very air has been captured and held within the fabric, creating a loft that separates you from the world below. The ticking is made of a dense, tightly woven linen to prevent the tiny quills from poking through, and as you move, the feathers shift with a sound like a distant, rushing wind, settling into the hollows of your form and ensuring that no part of you is left touched by the searching fingers of the cold. The first layer to touch the skin is the linen sheet, a fabric that carries the history of the fields and the loom. This linen is not the thin, factory-pressed material of another age, but a substantial, hand-loomed textile with a visible, honest grain. It has been bleached in the sun and rinsed in the clear waters of the stream, and it carries a scent of extreme cleanliness, a mixture of cold water, fresh air, and perhaps a hint of the dried lavender that was tucked into the storage chest. When you first slide beneath the sheet, it feels crisp and slightly cool, a momentary shock of freshness that quickly gives way to the heat of your own skin. The weave is strong and cooling in the heat, yet in the winter, it acts as a smooth, breathable barrier that keeps the heavier wools from being too abrasive. You can feel the tiny ridges of the flax fibers against your palms, a tactile reminder of the many hands that spun the thread and threw the shuttle to create this sanctuary above the linen. The weight of the night begins to accumulate in the form of heavy wool blankets. These are the true workhorses of the medieval bed, thick and dense, having been boiled and fulled until the fibers are tightly locked together. They are heavy, possessing a comforting gravity that presses down on the body, pinning you gently to the mattress and signaling to your nervous system that it is time to be still. The wool is dyed in deep, earthy tones, perhaps the rich blue of woad or the warm, ruddy brown of walnut husks, and it smells faintly of lanolin and wood smoke. There is a primal comfort in this weight. It feels like a protective hand, a shield that the wind cannot penetrate. As you pull the blankets up to your chin, the friction of the wool against the linen creates a tiny, static warmth, a microclimate that begins to glow with the steady heat of your own life. In the deepest heart of winter, when the moon hangs like a silver coin over the frozen moat, even the wool blankets are supplemented by the ancient warmth of animal skins, a great counterpane of sheepskin, with its long curly fleece turned inward, might be spread across the foot of the bed, or perhaps a heavy rug made of wolf or fox fur. These skins are the oldest form of protection, a legacy of a time when humans first sought shelter in the dark. The fur is incredibly soft, a luxurious texture that feels like a whisper against the hand, and it possesses an extraordinary ability to radiate heat back toward the sleeper. There is a subtle, musky scent to the fur, a reminder of the wild world outside. But here it has been tamed and repurposed to serve the peace of the chamber. To sleep beneath such a weight is to feel entirely insulated, a creature tucked away in a burrow of silk, wool, and hide, where the biting air of the room can never reach. The architecture of sleep is completed by the drawing of the bed curtains. These are not thin, decorative veils, but heavy hangings of say or velvet, suspended from the wooden canopy above. As the servant pulls them shut, the rings slide along the iron rods with a rhythmic, metallic rasp that signals the final closing of the world. One by one, the flickering light of the chamber is extinguished, until you are encased in a small, private room within a room. The air inside this enclosure quickly warms, held in place by the thick fabric that acts as a secondary wall. Inside this velvet tent, the darkness is absolute, a soft and welcoming void where the eyes can finally rest. The sounds of the castle, the distant call of a sentry, the scurrying of a mouse in the rushes, the groaning of the timber in the wind are muffled and distant, as if they are happening in another life entirely. Within this cocoon, the passage of time seems to slow to the pace of your own heartbeat. You are aware of the incredible density of the materials surrounding you, the ton of oak in the frame, the bushels of straw in the mattress, the pounds of wool in the blankets, and the thick, protective curtains. It is a physical manifestation of care, a labor-intensive construction dedicated entirely to the preservation of your rest. You can feel the tension leaving your shoulders, sinking down through the feathers and into the straw, as if the bed itself is absorbing the weariness of the day. The cold of the stone walls is still there, only a few feet away, but it has no power here. It is a ghost, a memory of the world you have left behind. You are the center of a warm, pulsing universe, held in the balance between the hardness of the castle and the softness of the dream. As the night deepens, the smells of the bed become more pronounced: the sweet straw, the clean linen, the rich wool, and the faint, lingering scent of the beeswax used to polish the bedposts. These are the scents of safety, the olfactory signatures of home. Your breath slows, becoming a steady, rhythmic sigh that joins the quiet symphony of the room. You might reach out a hand and feel the cool, smooth surface of the oak post, a grounding touch in the dark before tucking your arm back into the warmth of the blankets. The physical experience of this sleep is one of profound enclosure. You are not merely lying on a surface, but are integrated into a system of warmth and protection that has been perfected over centuries. The shadows within the curtains are deep and still, undisturbed by the drafts that may be dancing through the rest of the solar. You imagine the frost creeping across the window panes outside, tracing delicate patterns of ice, but here, the air is still and temperate. The weight of the blankets feels like a gentle embrace, a reassurance that you are exactly where you need to be. There is no urgency here, no ticking clock to measure the hours, only the slow, natural progression of the night, as the fire in the hearth turns to ash and the stars wheel across the sky. The bed is a vessel, carrying you safely through the dark toward the distant shore of the morning. In this moment, the medieval world feels not like a place of hardship, but a place of profound sensory richness. As we have explored the layers of wool and the sturdy embrace of the oak bed, we must now turn our attention to the elemental force that made such a life possible: the fire. In the depths of a stone fortress, fire was more than just a utility. It was a living presence, a golden pulse that beat against the obsidian dark of the night. Tonight, we will sit by the fading hearth, watching the way the orange light licks the rough-hewn stone, and feel the gradual, rhythmic cooling of the air as the embers are tucked away for their own sleep. We will discover how the people of the castle negotiated with the cold, using iron, wood, and ash to create a fragile but enduring circle of warmth that allowed the spirit to find peace in a world made of ice and shadow. The fireplace in the great chamber is a massive, yawning cavern of stone, a monumental piece of architecture that serves as the room's altar. It is not like the small, boxed-in grates of later centuries. It is a wide-open stage where great logs of oak and ash, thick as a man's thigh, surrender themselves to the heat. High above the hearth, a stone hood projects outward, carved with the patient marks of the mason's chisel, catching the rising smoke and drawing it up into the darkness of the chimney. If you look closely at the back of the fireplace, you might see a heavy plate of cast iron, the fire back which glows with a dull, cherry-red intensity. This iron plate is the memory of the fire. It drinks in the heat of the flames and breathes it back out into the room, long after the wood has turned to white ghost ash. The stone surrounding the hearth, too, has become a reservoir of warmth, a gentle heat that you can feel radiating toward you, even from several feet away, like the warmth of a sun-baked rock at the end of a summer's day. As the evening settles into the deep hours, the ritual of the hearth begins to slow. The great hall has grown quiet, and here in the private solar, the fire is being prepared for the long vigil of the night. There is a specific, meditative sound to this process: the rhythmic scraping of an iron shovel against the hearthstone as the glowing coals are gathered together. This is the banking of the fire, a vital craft of preservation. The servant, moving with a slow and reverent deliberation, does not seek to extinguish the fire, but to help it hibernate. They pile the red-hot embers into a tidy mound, and then cover them carefully with a thick blanket of gray ash. This layer of ash acts as an insulator, starving the coals of just enough air to keep them from burning away, but allowing them to pulse with a low, secret heat until the first light of dawn. Underneath that gray crust, the fire remains alive, a hidden sun waiting to be woken with a gentle breath and a handful of dry kindling in the morning. The contrast between the light of the hearth and the surrounding stone is a visual lullaby. Beyond the reach of the fire's golden fingers, the castle remains a place of deep, impenetrable shadows. The corners of the room are soft and blurred, where the tapestries hang like heavy, silent sentinels. The stone of the walls, where it is not covered by woven wool, looks like frozen water in the dim light gray, unyielding and ancient. You can almost see the battle between the warmth of the fire and the cold of the masonry. The light pushes outward, illuminating the grain of the floorboards and the curve of a wooden chair. But the cold always waits at the edges, patient and heavy. This creates a profound sense of intimacy within the circle of light. The world is reduced to this small, warm space, making the bed and the hearth the only 2 points of reality in a sea of shadow. It is a feeling of being deeply anchored, of being held in the palm of a protective hand while the rest of the world fades into nothingness. In rooms where the great fireplace cannot reach, or perhaps closer to the bedside, to provide a final bloom of heat, stands the brazier. This is a beautiful, functional object of hammered bronze or iron, a tripod holding a basin of glowing charcoal. Unlike the wood fire, which crackles and pops with a restless energy, the charcoal in the brazier burns with a steady, silent intensity. It does not flame. It simply glows, a deep and vibrant crimson that looks like a fallen star resting in a cradle of metal. The heat from the brazier is different. It is a dry, penetrating warmth that seems to vibrate through the air. As you sit near it, you can smell the clean, slightly metallic scent of the charcoal, a fragrance that is synonymous with the indoor winter. The brazier is a portable sun, a small piece of the hearth that can be moved to chase the dampness from the corners of the room or to warm the heavy air inside the bed curtains before one climbs in for the night. The sounds of the fire are the heartbeat of the castle at night. There is the occasional soft thud of a log settling into the white ash, a sound that is both startling and deeply comforting in the silence. There is the faint, high-pitched hiss of sap escaping from the end of a piece of birch, a tiny whistle that sounds like a distant bird call, and beneath it all, there is the constant, low-frequency hum of the heat itself, nearly imperceptible vibration that fills the ears and lulls the mind. It is a white noise of the ancient world, a sound that has signaled safety and survival to humans for thousands of years. As you listen, your own breathing begins to synchronize with the slow pulse of the fire, the frantic pace of the daylight hours, the clatter of armor, the shouting of commands. The heavy work of the fields is forgotten, replaced by this singular, rhythmic focus on the dying light. The air in the chamber is a living thing, shifting in temperature as you move through it. Near the hearth, the air is thick and toasted, carrying the rich, smoky scent of dried timber. But as you move toward the windows, you feel the breath of the stone. This is the cold air that has been trapped within the massive walls, a sharp, crisp draft that sneaks through the mortar and around the edges of the oak shutters. It smells of the outside of frost, of damp earth, and of the vast, sleeping forest. This contrast is what makes the warmth of the fire feel so precious. You do not take the heat for granted. You feel it as a physical gift, a shield that you have earned against the elements. The sensation of the cold air on your face, while your body is bathed in the radiance of the fire, is one of the most grounding experiences of the medieval night. It reminds you that you are alive, and that you are sheltered. You watch as the last candle is snuffed out, the wick glowing red for a moment before a thin ribbon of gray smoke curls up into the dark. Now, the only light comes from the banked hearth and the low glow of the brazier. The room has transformed. The high timber ceiling is gone, replaced by a velvet void. The furniture has become strange, humped shapes in the gloom. The only movement is the slow, rhythmic pulsing of the embers beneath the ash, casting a faint, rhythmic red glow onto the floor. It looks like the castle itself is breathing, a slow and ancient respiration that mirrors your own. The emotional atmosphere is one of profound stillness. There is no more work to be done, no more decisions to be made. The fire is banked, the doors are bolted, and the cold is kept at bay by the simple, enduring power of the stone and the flame as you prepare to retreat into the layers of your bed. You take one last look at the hearth. You think of the wood that was gathered in the autumn, the sound of the axe in the crisp morning air, the hauling of the sleds over the first frost. All that labor has been transformed into this peace. The fire is the culmination of the year's work, the final harvest of the sun's energy, given back to you in the dark of January. There is a deep sense of gratitude in this thought, a connection to the cycles of the earth that we often lose in our modern lives. The fire is not just heat, it is time. It is the summer sun, stored in the rings of the oak, released slowly to guide you through the winter. This realization brings a wave of calm, a sense of belonging to a greater, more rhythmic world. You climb into the bed, and as you draw the heavy velvet curtains, the glow of the room is cut off, leaving you in a warm, private darkness. But even here, you are aware of the fire's presence. You know it is there, pulsing silently under its blanket of ash, a faithful companion that will wait for you until the morning. The knowledge of that heat, and the heavy, radiating warmth of the stone fire back, provides a psychological security that allows the mind to finally let go. The struggle to stay warm is over for the night. The preparations have been made, the defenses are set, and the fire is holding the line. You can feel the heaviness of sleep pulling at you. A weight as natural and unavoidable as the stone walls themselves. In the final moments before sleep takes you, the world narrows to the sound of your own breath and the distant, muffled memory of the fire's crackle. The cold outside is vast, a kingdom of ice stretching from the battlements to the horizon, but it cannot touch you. You are encased in a series of circles. The circle of the curtains, the circle of the bed, the circle of the chamber, and the circle of the castle walls. And at the very center of it all is the fire, the tiny, banked spark that represents the persistence of life in the heart of the winter. It is a beautiful, fragile, and invincible thing. You surrender to the dark, knowing that the embers are keeping watch, and that the warmth will still be there when the world wakes up once more. The silence of the room is now absolute, save for the very faint, rhythmic sound of the wood cooling and the stones settling. The fire is a secret now, hidden away beneath the ash, but its influence is everywhere. As we continue our journey through the quiet, stone-bound corridors of the medieval world, we find ourselves standing at the threshold of a very special sanctuary. We have felt the weight of the wool blankets and heard the rhythmic sigh of the straw mattresses, but now we look toward the final boundary between the sleeper and the vast, cold expanse of the castle chamber. We are going to explore the world of the bed curtains and the grand canopist, those architectural marvels of fabric and wood that did not just furnish a room, but created a secret, warm, and private kingdom within it. In a world of high ceilings and drafty halls, these heavy drapes were the final defense against the winter's breath. As the last candle flickers in its iron holder, let us watch how the drawing of a single piece of velvet can transform a cold, echoing space into a cocoon of absolute peace and stillness. The canopy bed, or the tester, stands in the center of the solar like a great, silent ship anchored in a harbor of stone. Above it, the wooden ceiling of the bed, the canopy itself, is a masterpiece of joinery, often carved from dark, polished walnut or oak that gleams softly in the dying firelight. This overhead roof serves a dual purpose. It guards against the fine dust that might drift down from the ancient timber beams of the castle ceiling, and it acts as the first collector of rising warmth. If you were to look up from the pillows, you might see intricate patterns carved into the wood rose's stars, or perhaps the protective sigils of a family lineage, one, a silent guardian of the sleeper's dreams. This wooden sky creates a sense of profound enclosure, a feeling that even the vertical space above you is protected and claimed. It is the beginning of the room within a room, a structural promise of safety that allows the mind to begin its slow descent into rest. Suspended from this wooden sky are the curtains themselves, and it is here that the true magic of medieval sleep is found. These are not the light, airy drapes of a modern window. They are massive, substantial walls of woven textile. Imagine the weight of thick, double-faced wool, or the heavy pile of velvet, dyed in deep crimsons, forest greens, or midnight blues. As you reach out to touch the fabric, your fingers sink into a texture that is both soft and incredibly dense. This fabric is a barrier, a wall of soft armor, designed to repel the searching fingers of the cold air that dances across the stone floor. When the curtains are open during the day, they are bunched against the heavy oak posts, tied back with thick silken cords. But as the night deepens and the temperature in the chamber begins its inevitable slide toward the freezing mark, the ritual of the closing begins. There is a sound to this ritual that is as rhythmic as a lullaby, the sliding of heavy iron or brass rings along a metal rod. It is a slow, metallic rasp, a series of soft clicks and sighs as the fabric is pulled shut, inch by inch. With each movement, a portion of the outside world is edited away. First, the flickering hearth is hidden from view. Then, the shadows of the high corners disappear. Finally, as the last curtain meets the first, the entire room vanishes. You are left in a small, square universe of fabric. The air inside this enclosure immediately begins to change. It becomes still, losing the restless movement of the drafts that snake under the doors and through the window slits. It is a stillness you can almost feel against your skin, a quiet, temperate peace that belongs only to you. Inside this fabric tent, the warmth of your own body becomes your primary source of heat. In the vastness of the castle, a single person's warmth is lost, scattered like sparks in the wind. But here, within the four walls of the bed curtains, that heat is captured and held. It rises from the linen sheets, reflects off the heavy wool hangings, and circulates in the small volume of air, creating a microclimate that is remarkably constant. It is a beautiful irony of the medieval world. The colder the castle becomes, the more precious and effective this small enclosure feels. You are like a bird in a nest, or a creature in a burrow, protected by layers of human ingenuity. The heavy velvet acts as an insulator of sound, as well as heat. The distant howling of the wind on the battlements, the rhythmic pacing of the night watch, and the occasional creak of the castle's settling stones are all softened, turned into a distant, muffled hum that only serves to deepen your sense of isolation and security. The psychological effect of this enclosure cannot be overstated. In the medieval mind, the night was a time of vast, spiritual uncertainty, a world of shadows and unknowns. By drawing the curtains, one created a physical boundary between the self and the infinite dark. Within the bed, there is a sense of absolute privacy, a luxury that was rare in the communal life of a castle. This is your private chapel of rest, a place where the weight of your title, your duties, and your earthly worries can finally be shed. The darkness inside the curtains is not a frightening dark, but a velvety, maternal one. It is a darkness that invites the eyes to close and the muscles to unknot. Knowing that the world outside has been successfully locked away, as you lie there, the faint scent of the fabric begins to fill your senses. It is a complex aroma, the smell of the wool itself, which carries a hint of the meadows, the scent of the dyes, derived from roots and insects, and the faint, lingering fragrance of the herbs that were tucked into the folds of the curtains during the day. Lavender, woodruff, and dried rose petals were often used to keep the textiles fresh, and as the air within the bed warms, these scents are released in a slow, aromatic steam. It is a natural form of aromatherapy, a gentle scent that guides the mind away from the stresses of the day and toward the gardens of the imagination. You breathe in the lavender and the wool, and with each breath, you feel yourself sinking deeper into the soft landscape of the featherbed. The play of light inside the curtains is equally hypnotic. If a small fire still burns in the hearth, you might see a faint, dancing glow penetrating the fabric, turning the deep red of the velvet into a pulsing, rhythmic orange. It is as if the curtains themselves are breathing, catching the heartbeat of the fire and bringing it to you in a softened, filtered form. This dim, warm light is the perfect companion for the edge of sleep. It provides enough visibility to see the gentle curve of the blankets and the sturdy presence of the bedposts, but not enough to distract the mind. It is a twilight world, a space between waking and dreaming where time has no meaning. You think of the generations of people who have found solace in this same way. From the highest king to the noble lady, this ritual of the curtains has been a constant through the centuries. It is a human response to the grandeur and the harshness of the stone architecture. We build great fortresses to protect our lands, but we build these small, soft tents to protect our souls. There is a profound humility in this, the realization that even the most powerful person in the realm needs a few yards of fabric and a pile of feathers to feel safe in the dark. This connection to the past is like a warm thread, binding you to the millions of others who have tucked themselves into similar nests, listening to the same winter winds and feeling the same gratitude for the warmth. The weight of the blankets above you and the softness of the feathers beneath you are now perfectly balanced by the stillness of the air around you. The enclosure is complete. You are no longer in a castle. You are in a sanctuary of your own making. The world of stone and iron is gone, replaced by a world of textile and timber. Your thoughts begin to fragment, turning into soft, impressionistic images, the swaying of a wheat field, the slow movement of a cloud, the rhythm of a loom. The boundaries of your body seem to soften, merging with the warmth of the linen and the silence of the velvet. Outside the curtains, the frost is thickening on the oak shutters, and the moonlight is casting silver shadows across the rushes on the floor. The castle is a silent, frozen giant, standing watch over the sleeping valley. But inside your small, curtained kingdom, the air is as soft as a summer evening. The fire in the hearth may die down to white ash, and the candles may burn out in their sockets, but the heat you have captured remains. It is a steady, faithful warmth that will hold you until the morning light begins to filter through the weave of the fabric, signaling the return of the world. As you drift into the final, deepest stage of rest, you feel a sense of profound completion. The curtains are closed, the fire is banked, and the night is yours. The castle, with all its strength and coldness, has succeeded in its ultimate task. It has provided a place where you can be vulnerable, where you can be still, and where you can finally sleep. The velvet walls are the final embrace of the day, a soft and enduring promise of peace. You are safe. You are warm. You are tucked away in the heart of the history, resting in the timeless curtained dark of the medieval night. As the moon climbs higher over the jagged stone ramparts, and the frost begins to bloom like silver lace upon the iron gates, we are going to explore one of the most intimate and misunderstood aspects of medieval life. We have spent time in the grand solitude of the four-poster bed and felt the radiant heat of the great stone hearth. But now, we must look at the castle not as a collection of separate rooms, but as a living, breathing community of warmth. In these long, biting winters, survival was not a solitary endeavor. It was a collective one. To sleep in a medieval castle was to be part of a human tapestry, a shared experience where the boundaries between lord and servant, family and friend, and even human and animal, blurred in the quiet pursuit of heat. Tonight, we will settle into the great hall as the lights grow dim, and we will feel the profound, grounding comfort of shared breath and the ancient, primal security of the huddle. The great hall, which by day is a theater of power and bustling administration, undergoes a quiet and remarkable transformation as the sun dips below the horizon. The long trestle tables, once heavy with the weight of communal feasts and the clatter of pewter, are dismantled or pushed against the tapestry-covered walls. The floor, thick with its winter layering of fresh straw and dried meadowsweet, becomes a vast, communal bed for the greater part of the household. Here, the grooms, the cooks, the pages, and the men-at-arms do not seek separate chambers, for the cold of a solitary room is a dangerous thing. Instead, they gather in the proximity of the central hearth, finding their places with a slow, practiced ease. There is no sense of hardship in this communal arrangement. Rather, there is a deep, unspoken sense of belonging. To sleep in the company of your fellows is to know that you are watched over, and that your own body heat is a gift you give to the person beside you, just as theirs is a gift to you. As you look across the hall in the fading firelight, you see the household settling in clusters. They do not lie apart, but in groups of 3 or 4, sharing heavy wool cloaks and thick furs that have been handed down through generations. There is a gentle, rhythmic quality to their movements, the shaking out of a moth-fretted blanket, the soft thud of a leather tunic being used as a pillow, and the hushed murmurs of a final evening prayer. The textures here are rustic and honest, the scratchy warmth of boiled wool, the suppleness of well-worn deer hide, and the dry, sweet rustle of the floor rushes as they settle under the weight of the sleepers. The air is thick with a scent that is the very essence of the medieval night, a mixture of wood smoke, old leather, the temps of iron, and the pervasive, comforting smell of clean hay. It is a sensory landscape that speaks of safety and the simple, enduring reality of being together in the dark. The heat in the great hall is a shared currency. In the absence of modern warmth, the human body becomes a small, efficient furnace, and when these furnaces are gathered together, they create a reservoir of heat that defies the freezing stone. You can feel this collective warmth as a soft, invisible weight in the air. It is a living atmosphere, far more resilient than the heat from the hearth alone. There is something deeply hypnotic about the sound of 100 people breathing in unison, a slow, oceanic swell of sound that fills the vast space of the hall. It is a lullaby of the masses, a rhythmic assurance that life is continuing, steady and strong. Despite the howling of the winter wind outside the thick masonry, the individual ego fades away in this environment, replaced by a quiet, communal peace that is both humbling and profoundly restorative. Even in the more private quarters of the castle, sleep is rarely a solitary experience. In the Lord Solar, the great canopy bed we explored before is often surrounded by the presence of others. At the foot of the massive oak frame, a smaller, lower bed, the truckle or trundle bed, is pulled out from its daytime hiding place. Here, a trusted page or a personal squire sleeps, his presence serving both as a measure of protection and a source of additional warmth for the chamber. The social hierarchy remains, but in the realm of sleep, the physical proximity creates a unique bond of companionship. The breathing of the young man at the foot of the bed provides a rhythmic counterpoint to the breathing of the lord and lady above, a human connection that makes the vast, shadowed room feel less empty. There is a sense of mutual reliance here. The squire finds comfort in the proximity of his master's authority, and the master finds peace in the wakeful presence of his loyal servant. Furthermore, the lady of the castle is often surrounded by her tirewomen and maids, who might sleep on pallets of straw or small cots arranged in the same chamber, or in the small antechamber just beyond the heavy oak door. This was not merely for convenience, but for the shared emotional and physical security that only a group can provide. They would often spend the final hours of the day brushing each other's hair or whispering stories by the light of a single candle, their voices a soft, melodic hum that gradually faded into the silence of the night. This communal transition into sleep served as a psychological buffer against the isolation of the castle. The chamber becomes a sanctuary of shared femininity and quiet confidence. where the collective warmth of the women's presence creates an atmosphere of gentle, enduring softness within the hard, masculine strength of the fortress walls, beyond the human inhabitants. The castle at night is also home to the warmth of animals. In the great hall, the great hounds, the deerhounds, and greyhounds, who have spent the day racing through the forest, are allowed to curl up among the sleepers. These dogs are literal bedwarmers, their large, muscular bodies radiating an intense and steady heat. To have a hound resting its heavy head upon your feet, or leaning its flank against your side, was a luxury of the highest order. Their fur is thick and coarse, carrying the scent of the outdoors and the forest floor, and their deep, contented sighs add another layer to the castle's nightly symphony. The phrase, "a three-dog night," carries a literal meaning here. On the coldest nights, the presence of these animals was often the difference between a restless shiver and a deep, toast-warm sleep. There is a beautiful, ancient trust in this shared rest, a reminder of the prehistoric bond between human and dog, forged in the flickering light of 1,000 different fires. In some castles, particularly in the lower vaulted chambers, or the areas adjacent to the stables, the animal heat was even more direct. The livestock kept within the walls, the prized horses, the milk cows, or the oxen, acted as massive biological heaters. The heat from their bodies would rise through the stone floors and timber ceilings, providing a subtle but constant floor heating for the rooms above. The rhythmic lowing of a cow in the distance, or the muffled stamp of a horse's hoof in the straw, were not disturbances, but reassuring sounds of life. They were the background noise of a world that understood the value of every living soul in the battle against the cold. The castle was an ecosystem of warmth, where every heart, whether human or beast, contributed its small spark to the collective fire of the household. The emotional weight of this communal sleep is one of profound safety. In our modern world, we often equate privacy with comfort. But for the medieval inhabitant, solitude in the dark was a state of vulnerability. To be alone was to be exposed to the cold, to the shadows, and to the unknown. But to sleep in a room full of people was to be part of a fortress within a fortress. If the fire grew low, someone would stir to bank the embers. If a shutter rattled in the wind, a hand would reach out to steady it. If a nightmare disturbed the peace, the soft breathing of a neighbor would pull you back to reality. This shared experience fostered a level of trust and intimacy that is difficult to imagine today. You knew the cadence of your neighbor's sleep, the scent of their wool cloak, and the warmth of their shoulder. This physical closeness created a social fabric that was as strong and enduring as the stone walls themselves. As the middle of the night approaches, the castle reaches its peak of stillness. The great fire in the hall has settled into a glowing red landscape of embers, casting a dim, uniform light over the sea of sleeping forms. The only movement is the slow, collective rise and fall of chests, and the occasional flickering of a shadow on the high timbered roof. The cold is still there, pressing against the exterior of the castle, turning the moat to ice and the battlements to silver, but inside, the community is winning. The shared body heat has created a lingering heavy warmth that hangs in the air like a blanket. It is a slow, patient heat, a testament to the power of togetherness. You can feel the peace of this moment, a peace that is not just the absence of noise, but the presence of a deep, collective security. The guards on the high walk, wrapped in their thick fur mantles, occasionally look down through the interior windows into the hall. From their vantage point in the cold, biting air of the ramparts, the hall looks like a warm, golden hive, a place of profound rest. Their own companionship on the walls, the shared stories, and the passing of a leather costrol of warming wine, is a different kind of communal heat, a brotherhood of the watch that keeps the rest of the household safe. They know that their vigilance allows the communal sleep below to remain undisturbed, and there is a quiet pride in that duty. As the wind begins to sigh through the high crenellated battlements, and the shadows in the stone corridors grow long and deep, we are going to focus our attention on the most intimate layer of our medieval sanctuary. We have spoken of the massive stone walls, the flickering hearths, and the heavy velvet curtains that create a room within a room. But now we turn to the very things that touch the skin. In the heart of a winter's night, when the castle itself seems to groan under the weight of the frost, the clothes one wears to bed are not merely garments, they are a secondary skin, a carefully constructed fortress of textile designed to trap the precious heat of the body. Tonight, we will feel the weight of the hand-woven wool, the crispness of the sun-bleached linen, and the soft, heavy embrace of the garments that turned a cold stone chamber into a place of profound and personal warmth. The journey toward sleep begins with the shedding of the day's heavy, dirt-stained outer layers, the thick leather belts, the heavy surcoats of stiffened wool, and the iron-buckled shoes that have trodden the rushes of the great hall. As these are set aside, we are left with the foundational layer of the medieval wardrobe, the linen chemise, or smock. This garment is the ghost of the summer fields, woven from the fibers of the flax plant that once stood tall under a warm sun. If you were to run your hand over this linen, you would find it surprisingly substantial. It is not the thin, fleeting fabric of a later age, but a sturdy, honest weave that carries the faint, clean scent of the lye soap and the clear river water used to wash it. Against the skin, it feels cool for only a fleeting moment before it drinks in the body's heat, becoming a breathable, soft barrier that protects the more delicate layers of the self from the coarser wools that lie above. The linen smock is long and generous, falling in heavy folds down to the knees or the ankles, providing a modest and comfortable base for the night's rest. There is a quiet, rhythmic sound to the movement of this fabric, a soft, whispering rustle as you move through the shadows of the chamber. The sleeves are wide and gathered at the wrists, ensuring that no stray drafts can snake their way up the arms. As you pull this garment over your head, you feel the weight of the craftsmanship that went into its creation. The thousands of individual threads spun by hand on a wooden wheel, the steady beat of the loom, and the patient stitching of the seams. This linen is a testament to the slow time of the medieval world, a fabric that was made to last a lifetime and to offer the same reliable comfort night after night, season after season. But linen alone is not enough to defy the deep chill of the stone. Over the chemise, a second layer is added, usually a tunic or a kirtle made of the finest wool the household can provide. This is the sleeping tunic, a garment that is often just as substantial as the clothes worn during the day. This wool has been carded and spun until it is dense and resilient, possessing a natural loft that traps the air in tiny, microscopic pockets. When you slip into this woolen layer, you feel an immediate, radiating warmth. It is a heavy, grounding sensation, as if you are being wrapped in the very essence of the flock. The wool carries a faint, earthy aroma, memory of the sheep and the lanolin that naturally resists the dampness of the castle air. There is no sharpness to this wool. It has been fulled and brushed until it is as soft as a cloud, a gentle weight that presses against the linen and seals the heat inside. In the most bitter reaches of the winter, the concept of undressing for bed is a foreign one. Instead, the medieval sleeper prepares by layering their defenses. You might keep on your hosta long woolen leggings that reach from the feet to the waist, ensuring that the legs, which often feel the cold most acutely, are fully insulated. These hose are thick and warm, acting like a soft casing for the limbs. You might also don a pair of sleeping socks, knitted from heavy yarn that has been doubled for extra thickness. These are not merely garments. They are small sanctuaries for the feet, which can rest deep within the straw and feathers of the mattress, far removed from the cold floor. The sensation of being fully clothed in soft, natural fibers is one of immense security. It feels as though you are wearing your own personal hearth, a portable fire that remains with you no matter where you move in the chamber. Perhaps the most important garment for the medieval night, however, is the coif, or the sleeping cap. In a world where the air above the blankets can drop to a temperature that turns the breath into a silver mist, the head must be protected. The coif is a simple, close-fitting cap made of fine linen or light wool, which ties beneath the chin with soft fabric ribbons. It covers the ears and the back of the neck, preventing the body's most vital heat from escaping into the darkness. When you tie the strings of the coif, the world seems to quiet down. The sounds of the wind and the distant castle life are muffled by the fabric, creating a sense of internal focus. The cap acts as a psychological signal that the day is truly over. It creates a small, warm dome of air around the head, ensuring that as you tuck your chin into the blankets, the warmth you generate remains held within your own private sphere. For the very wealthiest, or on nights when the frost is so thick it turns the moat to solid glass, an additional layer of fur might be added. This is not a formal garment, but a simple sleeveless vest or a nightgown lined with the softest rabbit or squirrel fur. The texture of this fur is unlike anything else, a liquid, sealed softness that feels like a caress against the skin of the neck and arms. It possesses an incredible ability to generate heat almost instantaneously, acting as a final, invincible shield against the stone. As you wrap this fur-lined layer around yourself, you feel the ultimate luxury of the medieval world, the ability to remain perfectly, almost impossibly warm, while the rest of the world is frozen in a silent, icy grip. The experience of sleeping fully clothed is one of deep, tactile richness. Every movement you make in bed creates a soft symphony of textures, the smooth slide of the linen against the wool, the muffled rustle of the hose, and the gentle friction of the fabric against the sheets. There is no part of the body left exposed to the night air, which was once believed to carry the vapors of the marshes and the chill of the stars. Instead, you are entirely encased, a human soul, wrapped in the best the earth can provide. This layering is a ritual of self-care, a slow and deliberate process of building a home for the body before the mind departs for the world of dreams. You feel the weight of the clothes as a comfort, a reassurance that you are prepared for whatever the night may bring. As you lie in the center of the great feather bed, you can feel the layers working in harmony. The linen draws away the moisture of the body, the wool traps the heat, and the fur, or heavy outer tunic, provides the weight that anchors you to the mattress. It is a perfect, ancient system of insulation. The cold of the stone walls is a distant reality, something that belongs to the architecture of the castle, but not to the architecture of the self. You are a core of warmth, a steady and enduring flame held within a series of soft, textile lanterns. The darkness inside the bed curtains is absolute, but your body is illuminated by its own heat, a sensation of glowing comfort that radiates from your chest to your fingertips. The scents of the sleeping clothes are the scents of a long and careful life. There is the smell of the sun in the linen, the smell of the forest in the wool, and the faint, sweet scent of the herbs that were used to store these garments during the summer months. Perhaps a sprig of dried woodruff or a bit of cedar has left its mark on the fabric, a fragrance that is released as the wool warms up against your skin. This is the perfume of the medieval night knot, the sharp, artificial scents of a later age, but the deep, resonant smells of the natural world, brought inside to offer comfort and peace. You breathe in these scents, and they act like a gentle hand, smoothing the furrows of the mind and inviting the spirit to let go. The stillness of the chamber is now complete. You are aware of your own heartbeat, a slow and steady pulse that is mirrored by the quiet rustle of your clothes as you breathe. The physical experience of being so thoroughly wrapped is one of profound enclosure. You are not just lying in a bed. You are participating in a tradition of survival that spans 1,000 years. Every stitch, every fiber, and every layer is a testament to the human desire to find softness in a world of stone. The clothes you wear are your companions through the long, dark, faithful guardians that will not fail you until the morning sun touches the frost on the windows. As the last embers in the hearth fade to a dull, pulsing red, You let yourself sink deeper into the warmth. The weight of your tunics and hose feels like a gentle, constant embrace, a reminder that you are protected. The cold of the castle is a vast and silent ocean, but you are a warm and steady island, anchored by the wool and the linen. You feel the edges of your consciousness beginning to blur, merging with the softness of the fabric and the silence of the room. The journey into sleep is no longer a descent, but a graceful unfolding, a surrender to the peace that you have so carefully constructed around your own body. The night is long, and the stone is cold, but you are wrapped in the wisdom of the centuries. You are safe. You are warm. As we drift together into the deepest part of our journey, we find ourselves standing before the tall, narrow window of the solar, looking out across the winter landscape of the medieval world. The sun has long since vanished, and the darkness that has settled over the land is not merely an absence of light, but a heavy, tactile presence. In this age, the winter night is a vast and silent kingdom that stretches for 14 or 15 hours, a long, blue-gray corridor of time that transforms the rhythm of human life. Outside the thick, limestone walls, the first soft flakes of snow are beginning to fall, spiraling down from a starless sky to blanket the forest, the moat, and the distant village in a muffled, white silence. Tonight, we will explore the profound stillness of these long winter nights, watching how the castle household adjusts its very heartbeat to match the slow, frozen pulse of the earth, and how the architecture of sleep expands to fill the great, quiet void of the winter dark. As you stand by the window, you can feel the immense power of the cold pressing against the glassless opening, held back only by the heavy oak shutters and the thick wool curtains. The snow outside is falling with a relentless, quiet grace, gathering in the crevices of the stone and softening the sharp edges of the battlements. There is no sound from the world beyond the walls. The birds are silent in their thickets, the deer are huddled in the lee of the hills, and the village fires have been banked until they are nothing but glowing eyes in the dark. This is a time of great hibernation. The castle, which in the summer is a hive of noise and movement, has become a silent sentinel, a stone vessel floating on a sea of ice. The pace of life has slowed to a crawl, as if the very blood in the veins of the household has thickened to match the cooling of the hearth. There is no hurry here, for there is nowhere to go, and nothing to be done until the sun deigns to return. The experience of time in the medieval winter is fundamentally different from any other season. When the darkness arrives so early in the afternoon, the evening becomes a long, unfolding meditation. There is a deep, psychological shift that occurs as the household moves from the labor of the day into the vigil of the night. This is the season of the first sleep and the second sleep, a natural, Baphosic rhythm that emerges when the nights are long and the artificial light is scarce. After a simple, warming meal in the late afternoon, the household settles early. You might find yourself drifting into a deep, heavy slumber shortly after the vesper bell has finished its final, echoing toll. This first sleep is a thick, dreamless descent, a response to the cold and the dark that pulls you down into the straw and the feathers like a stone sinking into a deep, still pond in the middle of the night. Perhaps 3 or 4 hours later, you might wake naturally. In the modern world, this would be a moment of anxiety, but here, in the heart of the winter castle, it is a time of profound and quiet beauty. This period of wakefulness, known as the watch, is a time for reflection, for low-whispered conversation, or for simply lying still and listening to the silence of the fortress. The fire in the hearth has burned down to a steady, pulsing glow, casting long, rhythmic shadows that move like slow breath across the tapestries. The air in the room is cold, but the air inside your bed curtains is a warm, lingering ghost of your own presence. You lie there, suspended between the two sleeps, feeling the immense weight of the winter night as a form of protection. The darkness is not an empty space. It is a rich, velvet medium in which the mind can wander without the distractions of the day. During this midnight watch, The castle feels more alive than at any other time. You might hear the muffled, rhythmic tread of the night watchman on the gallery above. His footsteps a slow heartbeat that reassures you the world is still being guarded. You might hear the soft, metallic groan of the castle's iron hinges as they contract in the frost, or the distant, lonely howl of a wolf from the deep forest, a sound that only serves to make the warmth of your blankets feel more miraculous. There is a profound sense of gratitude that arises in this middle night wakefulness. You are aware of the snow piling up against the gates, of the wind scouring the stone, and yet, here you are, encased in wool and wood, safe in the heart of the keep. The long darkness becomes a luxury, a vast stretch of time where nothing is expected of you but to simply exist, to breathe, and to wait for the light as the watch draws to a close. You feel the second sleep beginning to pull at you. This sleep is different from the first. It is lighter, more imaginative, a time for the vivid and wandering dreams that often precede the dawn. You settle back into the hollow of your mattress, the straw rustling softly beneath you like a dry summer meadow. The cold has deepened outside, and perhaps a fine dusting of snow has found its way through a crack in the shutters, resting like diamond dust on the stone sill. But inside the bed, the heat has become concentrated and absolute. You tuck your hands beneath your chin, feeling the softness of the linen coif against your ears, and let yourself be carried away. The pacing of the winter night is a slow, circular dance, leading you from the dark, through the quiet reflection of the watch, and back into the soft embrace of the dream. The winter sleep is also a communal rhythm. In the great hall, the huddle of sleepers moves in a collective, unconscious synchrony. When one person stirs to adjust a heavy cloak, the movement ripples through the group, a shared adjustment of the human heat. The hounds, too, shift in their sleep, their paws patting against the rushes in pursuit of some phantom winter hare. This shared experience of the long night creates a deep, unspoken bond among the inhabitants of the castle. They are all travelers on the same long, dark journey, waiting together for the sun to cross the horizon. There is no loneliness in this winter darkness. It is too vast and too shared for that. The silence of the hall is a living thing, a tapestry of breaths and heartbeats that weaves the household together into a single, enduring entity. The psychology of the long winter night is one of extreme patience. In the summer, the days are frantic with growth and movement, but the winter is the time of the root, the time of the hidden strength. Sleep becomes the primary activity of the season, a way to conserve the body's energy and the castle's resources. The less one moves, the less wood is burned, the less food is consumed, and the more the spirit can rest. You begin to look forward to the early sunset, to the ritual of banking the fire and drawing the curtains. The bed becomes the most important place in the world, a wooden ark that carries you through the frozen months. You learn to appreciate the subtle variations in the dark, the blue-gray of the early evening, the obsidian of midnight, and the pale, ghostly silver of the pre-dawn hours. As the winter progresses, the castle seems to shrink, its world narrowing to the rooms with the strongest hearths and the thickest walls. The outer galleries and the high towers are left to the wind and the snow, while the life of the household retreats into the core of the keep. This physical contraction is mirrored by a mental one. Your thoughts become simpler, more focused on the immediate comforts of the fire, the blanket, and the companionship. The long nights are a time for the inner life, for the stories that are told in hushed tones around the dying embers, stories that explain the world and the stars and the history of the bloodline. These stories become part of the sleep itself, weaving their way into the dreams of the second sleep and providing a spiritual warmth that the stone cannot provide. The snow continues to fall outside, a silent white curtain that separates the castle from the rest of the world. By midnight, the moat is hidden beneath a thick crust of ice and a soft padding of white. The trees in the orchard look like ghosts, their branches heavy with the weight of the frozen sky. But inside, The air is still and heavy with the scent of the hearth. The slow, meditative pace of the night is a form of healing. It allows the stresses of the harvest and the tensions of the court to dissolve into the shadows. In the long winter dark, everyone is a child of the stone, seeking the same warmth and the same peace. The castle is not a prison. It is a sanctuary, a place where the winter is not fought, but lived with a quiet, dignified grace. As the hours crawl toward the morning, you find yourself at peace with the darkness. You'll no longer wish for the sun to rise quickly. You have learned to savor the weight of the blankets and the absolute stillness of the air. The winter night has taught you the value of the pause, the necessity of the long, slow rest. You are part of the ancient cycle of the earth, a cycle that requires the dark as much as the light. The castle, with its massive walls and its deep foundations, is the perfect stage for this meditation. It is a place built for endurance, for the long watch, and for the deep winter sleep. Finally, the very first hint of light begins to touch the eastern sky. Not a bright sun, but a pale, watery gray that filters through the snow-choked air. It is the signal that the long night is ending, but there is no rush to rise. The household will wait until the fires are rekindled and the first draft of warm ale is prepared. You stay within the warmth of your curtains for a few moments longer, listening to the first stirrings of the castle, the clatter of a bucket, the call of a guard, the first crackle of new wood on the hearth. As the heavy weight of the winter night settles fully upon the great stone keep, we are going to close our eyes and let the world of sight fade away entirely. Instead, we are going to listen. We are going to let our ears become our guides through the dark, winding corridors and the vast echoing halls of the medieval castle. In the deep stillness of the night, the castle is never truly silent. It has a voice of its own, a symphony of stone, timber, and wind that tells the story of the hours. These sounds are not the sharp, mechanical noises of our modern age, but soft, rhythmic, and elemental vibrations that have remained unchanged for 1,000 years. Tonight, as you lie tucked beneath your layers of wool and linen, let the distant, muffled music of the castle lull you into a state of profound and hypnotic peace, as we discover the gentle secrets hidden within the echoes of the night. The first sound that greets you in the sanctuary of your bed is the soft, rhythmic sigh of the wind as it finds the narrow arrow slits in the outer walls. These openings, carved deep into the 12-foot thickness of the limestone, act like the pipes of a great, stony organ. As the winter breeze presses against the castle, it is forced through these slender gaps, creating a low, haunting whistle that rises and falls with the breath of the storm. It is a lonely, ethereal sound, yet from within the warmth of your curtains, it is immensely comforting. It is the voice of the outside world, a reminder of the wild, untamed elements that are being successfully held at bay by the immense strength of the masonry. You hear it as a soft hush, a gentle, rushing murmur that seems to sing a lullaby to the sleeping fortress, a sound that speaks of vast distances and frozen forests, all while you remain perfectly still and perfectly safe. Beneath the song of the wind, there is the heartbeat of the castle, the steady, rhythmic footsteps of the night guards on the stone gallery outside your door. These are not the hurried, frantic steps of the day, but a slow, deliberate cadence that measures the passing of the hours. You hear the soft thud clink of leather boots and the subtle jingle of a mail shirt, a metallic shimmer of sound that is as delicate as the tinkling of ice. The footsteps recede, growing faint as the guard moves toward the far end of the corridor. And then, after a long and peaceful silence, they return, growing slowly louder in a predictable, reassuring loop. This is the sound of vigilance. It tells you that someone is awake so that you may sleep. Someone is walking the cold stone so that you may rest in the soft feathers. The regularity of the pace is hypnotic, a rhythmic anchor that grounds your consciousness and allows you to drift further into the dark, knowing that the perimeter of your world is secure, deep within the chamber itself. The fire in the hearth provides a constant, crackling commentary to the night. As the heavy oak logs surrender to the heat, they speak in a language of pops, sighs, and sudden, bright snaps. You hear the slow, rhythmic tick-tick-tick of the wood cooling and contracting. A sound like a tiny, wooden clock counting down the moments to midnight. Occasionally, a pocket of sap deep within the grain reaches its boiling point and releases a long, high-pitched hissa, tiny steam-driven whistle that fades as slowly as a falling star. And then there is the soft, heavy thud as a log, consumed by the flames, finally breaks apart and settles into the bed of white ash, sending a brief flurry of sparks up the chimney. These sounds are warm and intimate. They are the sounds of the hearth protecting its own, a domestic music that fills the room with a sense of living, breathing companionship. As you lie still, your ears begin to pick up the more subtle, secret sounds of the castle's own life. The great timber beams of the ceiling, centuries old and seasoned by the smoke of 1,000 fires, occasionally groan under the weight of the cooling air. It is a deep, resonant sound, a slow creak of settling wood that vibrates in the very bones of the room. It is not the sound of weakness, but of strength, the castle stretching its limbs in the cold, settling its immense weight into the earth. You might hear the tiny, industrious rustle of a mouse in the floor rushes, a frantic, papery scuttling that is quickly lost in the vastness of the hall. This small sound only emphasizes the profound silence that surrounds it, a tiny stitch of movement in the great, still fabric of the night. The water of the moat, partially frozen now, makes its own contribution to the evening's symphony. If you listen closely, you can hear the slow, crystalline tink of ice forming against the stone foundations, a sound as fragile as breaking glass. The water laps gently against the mossy masonry with a rhythmic slap-hush, a liquid pulse that matches the slow rise and fall of your own chest. This is a cold sound, a watery sound, but it is filtered through the thickness of the walls until it is nothing more than a memory, a distant vibration that tells you the world is turning to ice while you remain in the center of a warm and golden dream. In the middle of the night, during the quiet watch between the first and second sleep, the sounds of the castle become even more delicate. You might hear the far-off muffled chime of a bell from the abbey in the valley, its iron tongue striking the hours with a soft, mournful toll that carries through the crisp winter air. The sound is stripped of its sharpness by the distance and the snow, arriving at your ears as a rounded, golden hum. It is a reminder of the wider world, of the monks in their stalls and the villagers in their huts, all bound by the same temporal rhythm. And then there is the silence that follows the bella. Silence so deep and so heavy that you can almost hear the falling of the snow outside the shutters. A soft, persistent she that blankets the world in a white, muffled peace. Your own breathing becomes a part of this soundscape, a soft, steady rhythm that bridges the gap between the internal and the external. You hear the air moving in and out of your lungs, a gentle, oceanic sound that synchronizes with the sighing of the wind and the ticking of the fire. Within the enclosure of your bed curtains, your breath creates a small, warm echo, a private music that reinforces your sense of sanctuary. You are a part of the castle's voice now, one more heartbeat in the great stone-ribbed chest of the keep. The boundaries of yourself seem to expand, flowing out with the sounds into the room, up the chimney with the smoke, and out onto the battlements with the wind. The texture of these sounds is what makes them so hypnotic. They are all soft-edged and natural. There are no sudden, jarring alarms, no mechanical whirs, no artificial hums. Everything you hear is the result of physical forces: gravity, heat, wind, and movement. This makes the sounds predictable and comforting to the primitive parts of the brain. They tell a story of a world that is functioning exactly as it should. The guard is on his round. The fire is doing its work. The stone is holding its weight. The wind is passing by. This is the ultimate lullaby, the sound of a world that is secure and well. allowing you to let go of your own vigilance and surrender completely to the dark dot as the pre-dawn hours approach. The symphony of the night reaches its quietest movement. The wind has dropped to a mere whisper, and the fire is now a silent, glowing bed of embers. The guards move with even greater care, their footsteps becoming a ghost of a sound in the heavy, cold air. This is the time of the great stillness, when the castle seems to hold its breath in anticipation of the light. You can hear the very silence itself, a high, thin ringing in the ears that is the sound of absolute quietude. It is a moment of perfect, suspended peace, a void into which the mind can drift without form or direction. And then, the first sound of the new day arrives, not a loud noise, but a subtle change in the air. It might be the distant, muffled crow of a rooster from the stables, or the first rhythmic clatter of a wooden pail in the courtyard below. These sounds do not break the peace of the night. They gently transition you from the world of dreams back into the world of light. They are the final notes of the night's music, a slow and graceful coda that brings the symphony to a close. You stay in the warmth for a few moments longer, letting these first waking sounds wash over you, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for the long, beautiful dark and the songs it has sung to you. The castle has carried you safely through the night, its voice a constant companion in the shadows. From the whistling wind in the arrow slits to the steady footsteps of the guard, every sound has been a thread in the tapestry of your protection. You feel rested, grounded, and deeply connected to the stone and the timber. The night is over, but the memory of its music remains, a quiet, humming peace that will stay with you long after the sun has climbed above. The battlements and the bustle of the day has begun. As we linger in the soft amber glow of the fading embers, we are going to let our consciousness drift beyond the physical layers of wool and stone. Moving into the quiet, mystical landscape of the medieval mind, we have felt the weight of the blankets and heard the songs of the castle at night. But now we must understand how our ancestors perceived the very act of sleep itself. To the medieval soul, the night was not merely a lapse in consciousness or a period of biological recovery. It was a profound, spiritual journey, crossing over into a realm where the boundaries of the world were thin, and the whispers of the universe could finally be heard. Tonight, as the frost gathers on the iron window bars, and the silence of the keep grows heavy, we will explore the gentle beliefs, the wandering dreams, and the quiet mysteries of the night, discovering how a world without modern science found a deep and lasting peace in the shadows of the castle. As you lie in the absolute stillness of your curtained bed, you are entering what the medieval world called the short death, not a term of fear, but one of deep respect for the mystery of sleep. It was believed that as the eyes closed and the body became still, the soul began a delicate, rhythmic wandering, detaching itself slightly from the physical vessel to breathe the air of a more celestial world. This is why the preparation for sleep was so reverent and so quiet. You are not just resting your muscles, you are allowing your spirit to return to its source for a few hours of restoration. There is a beautiful, light-filled curiosity in this belief, the idea that while your body remains safely anchored in the straw and the feathers, your mind is free to walk through the gardens of memory and the halls of the divine. This perspective turns the act of falling asleep into a graceful surrender, a trust that you will be guided through the dark and returned to the light. When the morning bell tolls, the medieval understanding of the body was a delicate dance of the four humors: phlegm, yellow bile, and black biland. The night was the time when these internal tides were most active. As the cold of the winter castle pressed against the walls, it was believed that the body's internal heat retreated inward, toward the stomach and the heart, to aid in the digestion of the evening meal. This rising heat was thought to create vapors, gentle, aromatic mists that ascended from the body into the head, where they would eventually condense into the imagery of dreams. This is why the warmth of the bed was so essential. A cold body could not produce the necessary vapors for a healthy, restorative sleep, as you feel the heavy wool blankets pressing down on you. You can imagine this internal alchemy taking place, the slow, golden process of your own warmth, creating the theater of your dreams, turning the physical act of staying warm into a vital part of your spiritual well-being. In this world, dreams were not seen as random sparks of a tired brain, but as a language of symbols and messages. There was a quiet, contemplative peace in how people lived with their dreams. If you woke during the watch between your first and second sleep, you would not reach for a light, but would lie in the velvet dark, turning the images of your dreams over in your mind like smooth stones found in a river. A dream of a clear stream might signify a cleansing of the spirit, while a dream of a soaring hawk might be a sign of a rising ambition or a coming change. There was a sense that the universe was constantly speaking to you in the language of the night, providing a slow, unfolding guidance that only required your silence to understand. This belief turned the long hours of the winter night into a rich, interior harvest, where the mind gathered the wisdom of the shadows to prepare for the challenges of the day. The cold of the winter night was also understood through a mystical lens. It was not seen merely as a physical temperature, but as a quality that could affect the balance of the soul. The medieval sleeper believed that a chill caught in the night could lead to a phlegmatic static dampness of the spirit that would dull the wits and heavy the heart. To prevent this, the head was always kept covered by the linen coif, for the crown of the head was considered the gateway of the humors. When you tie the soft ribbons of your cap beneath your chin, you are doing more than keeping your ears warm. You are sealing your spirit within its fortress, ensuring that the room of the night air cannot enter. There is a profound sense of psychological security in this ritual. It makes the act of tucking yourself into bed feel like an act of spiritual fortification, where every layer of fabric is a shield against the unseen forces of the winter. The night air itself was a source of quiet curiosity. While later ages would fear the miasma of the dark, the medieval inhabitant of the castle looked upon the air of the night as a different medium entirely, one that belonged to the stars and the moon. It was a thinner, more ethereal air, meant for spirits and angels, not for the lungs of the waking. By drawing the heavy bed curtains, you are not just blocking drafts. You are creating a sanctuary of day air, the thick, warm, human-scented air that was safe for the soul to inhabit while the body was at rest. Inside your velvet enclosure, the atmosphere is heavy with the scent of dried lavender and old wool, a familiar and grounding scent that keeps you connected to the earth while your mind wanders through the celestial dark. This distinction between the air of the world and the air of the bed provided a deep, unconscious comfort, allowing the sleeper to feel entirely insulated from the vast, cold mysteries of the universe. One of the most beautiful and calming beliefs of the medieval night was the presence of the guardians. It was a common practice to invoke the four evangelists, or a host of protective spirits, to stand watch at the four corners of the bed as you settle into the feathers. You might imagine these figures standing silently in the shadows of the room: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, each guarding a post of your wooden ark. This belief transformed the loneliness of the night into a state of quiet companionship. You are never truly alone in the dark. You are surrounded by a sentinel of peace, a spiritual architecture that is just as strong as the stone of the castle. This sense of being watched over allowed for a level of surrender that is often missing from our modern lives. You do not need to be vigilant, for the vigilant is being held for you. The weight of the night is being carried by other shoulders, leaving you free to sink into the deepest, most restorative parts of the dark. The layout of the castle itself was sometimes seen as a reflection of this spiritual protection. The thick outer walls were the first circle of defense, followed by the inner keep, the chamber walls, the bed curtains, and finally, the layers of clothing. To the medieval sleeper, they were at the center of a great, concentric series of protective rings, like a seed within a fruit. This physical and spiritual layering created a sense of profound, unshakable safety. The winter cold might be vast, and the forest might be full of shadows, but you are at the very heart of a system designed to hold you fast. This belief made the experience of sleep feel like a return to a state of primal innocence, where the world was a great, caring machine dedicated to your preservation. As the night moves into the second sleep, the dreams were thought to become clearer and more spiritual as the vapors of the body settled, and the humors found their balance. This was the time for the morning dreams, the ones that arrived just as the first gray light began to touch the window shut. These dreams were held in high regard, seen as the most truthful and the most prophetic, as the soul was now fully rested and ready to return to the world. There is a quiet, hopeful energy to this belief, the idea that the night is a process of refinement, leading you toward a moment of clarity just before the day begins. It turns the long, dark hours into a purposeful journey, a slow climb from the heavy shadows of the evening toward the light of the morning. Even the sounds of the castle at night were interpreted through this lens of belief. The groaning of the timber was the castle settling its spirit. The whistling of the wind was the breath of the world, and the ticking of the fire was the heartbeat of the home. Nothing was purely physical. Everything had a resonance that connected the sleeper to the wider cosmos. This holistic view of the world made the experience of life in a castle feel deeply meaningful and interconnected. You are not a small, isolated individual fighting against the cold. You are a vital part of a great, living tapestry that includes the stone, the fire, the stars, and the spirits of the air. This realization brings a wave of calm that is as heavy and warm as the finest wool blanket. As you drift now, at the edge of the second sleep, the boundaries between your thoughts and the world around you begin to dissolve. You are no longer aware of the cold, for your humors are in perfect balance. You are no longer aware of the dark, for your inner light is burning steadily. You are a traveler in a peaceful, velvet landscape, guided by the guardians and warmed by the rising vapors of your own health. The castle stands silent and strong, a monument to this enduring faith, and you are held within its heart like a precious secret. The night is a long, slow gift, and you have accepted it with a quiet and open heart. The winter outside is a world of silver and shadow, a silent kingdom of ice and snow. But inside the sanctuary of your bed, the world is golden and soft. As we reach the end of our journey through the frost-rimed corridors and the flickering, hearthlit chambers of the medieval world, we find ourselves in the deepest, most silent part of the night. The moon has reached its zenith, casting a pale, ethereal light over the snow-dusted battlements, and the castle itself seems to have settled into a state of profound meditation. We have explored the ingenious layers of wool and linen, the communal warmth of the great hall, and the protective embrace of the canopy bed. But now, in this final hour, we will look at the deeper meaning of this life. We will reflect on the quiet resilience of the human spirit that found not just survival, but true, restorative rest in a world of cold, stone, and winter wind. Tonight, as the embers pulse with a final, fading glow, let us listen to the heartbeat of a world that knew how to be still, and find our own way into the deep, enduring peace of the historical night. The resilience of our ancestors was not a loud or combative thing. It was a quiet, steady strength that manifested in the way they lived with the elements. We often look back at the medieval castle and see only the hardship, the biting cold, the drafty halls, the lack of modern convenience, but for the people within these walls, these conditions were simply the texture of the world. There was a profound grace in their adaptation, a wisdom that understood how to bend to the rhythm of the seasons rather than trying to force the world to change. They did not see the winter as an enemy to be defeated. but as a season of retreat, a time to draw closer to one another and to the hearth. This quiet resilience is found in the meticulous carving of an oak bedframe, the patient spinning of a wool blanket, and the careful banking of the night's fire. It is a strength built on the understanding that warmth is a gift, and that rest is a sanctuary that must be crafted with intention and care. As you lie in the stillness of your own space, imagine the immense weight of the limestone walls that surround the medieval sleeper. These walls were quarried from the earth with hand and iron, hauled by oxen across frozen fields, and laid stone by masons who understood the language of gravity. There is a magnificent, slow energy in that stone, a memory of the deep earth and the ancient pressure of time. In the dead of winter, the stone holds the cold with an unyielding patience, but it also holds the history of the people it protects. The resilience of the castle is the resilience of the human hand that shaped it. When you feel the weight of your own blankets tonight, think of it as a connection to that same enduring strength. You are supported by the history of human ingenuity, by the millions of people who, for centuries, found ways to create a world of softness in the heart of the hardest stone. The quietude of medieval life during these long winter nights was a luxury of the spirit that we can scarcely imagine. Without the hum of electricity or the constant intrusion of light, the darkness was absolute and respected. This darkness was not a void, but a canvas. It allowed for a different kind of focus and mental stillness that mirrored the physical stillness of the frozen moat. The people of the castle were masters of the pause. They knew how to sit for hours by the fire, watching the way the flames turned the oak into light, without the need for distraction. Their strength lay in their ability to be alone with their thoughts and their prayers, finding a deep internal warmth that no draught could touch. This is the quiet rest that we are seeking. Tonight, a return to that state of simple existence, where the only requirement is to breathe and to be present in the sanctuary of the night. If you look at the fireplace one last time, you can see how the human spirit finds beauty in necessity. The fire is dying now, the great logs having been reduced to a landscape of glowing canyons and white ash peaks. But even in its decline, the fire is doing its most important work. It is radiating a soft, steady heat that has soaked into the floorboards and the tapestries, creating a reservoir of comfort that will last until the dawn. This is the quiet strength of medieval life, the ability to make a little go a long way, the resilience to find satisfaction in the steady glow of an ember rather than the roar of a furnace. As the light in the chamber fades to a whisper, you can feel the room becoming more intimate, more focused. The vastness of the castle has contracted until it is only you, the bed, and the fading pulse of the hearth. The sensory experience of this final rest is one of extreme softness. You are aware of the contrast between the unyielding nature of the stone architecture and the yielding nature of the human nest. The straw mattress, having been settled by the weight of the evening, is now a silent and supportive base. The feathers of the duvet have trapped your body's heat so effectively that you feel as though you are floating in a pool of warm light. The linen of your chemise and the wool of your tunic have become part of your own skin, a protective casing that makes the cold air of the room feel like a distant memory. This is the physical manifestation of resilience, the ability to turn a few yards of fabric and a pile of natural fibers into a fortress of peace. It is a slow, tactile victory over the winter, one that is won every night with the drawing of the curtains and the closing of the eyes. As the night reaches its deepest point, the sounds of the castle become a final, fading lullaby. The wind has dropped to a mere breath against the shutters, and the footsteps of the guard are so far away they sound like a heartbeat. The world is perfectly still. In this stillness, you realize that the medieval person did not find rest despite the discomforts of their world, but perhaps because of them. The effort required to stay warm, the communal reliance on one another, and the long hours of the dark made the moment of sleep feel like a profound accomplishment. It was a daily homecoming, a return to the center of the self. This is the quiet strength we can draw from tonight, the understanding that peace is not found in the absence of challenges, but in the graceful and resilient way we meet them. The history of the castle is a history of people who knew how to wait. They waited for the harvest, they waited for the return of the sun, and they waited for the morning bell. This patience is a form of power, a way of moving through time that is grounded and calm. As you drift closer to sleep, let this medieval patience fill you. There is no need to hurry toward tomorrow. The morning will come in its own time, just as it has for 1,000 years. For now, you are a passenger in the stone ark of the keep, carried safely through the sea of the dark. The cold may press against the walls, and the snow may cover the tracks in the forest, but you are held in a state of perfect, historical equilibrium. The reflections of the night are now beginning to blur, turning into soft, impressionistic memories of firelight and wool. You think of the hands that wove the blankets, the voices that whispered the evening prayers, and the hearts that found courage in the communal huddle. All of these things are part of the peace you feel now. The resilience of the past is your inheritance, a steady and enduring energy that you can lean into as you let go of the day. The castle is silent, the fire is banked, and the world is asleep. You have found your way from the cold stone to the quiet rest, and the journey is complete. The air in your chamber is now at its coolest, but your core is at its warmest. This balance is the essence of comfort, the sharp edge of the winter, making the soft center of the bed feel like a sanctuary. You can feel your own breath slowing, becoming as rhythmic and steady as the castle's own masonry. The thoughts of the day have been dismantled, one by one, like the trestle tables in the great hall, leaving only a vast and peaceful space. You are sinking now, moving past the layers of history, past the stone and the timber, into the boundless, restorative dark. The moon is beginning its slow descent toward the western horizon, and the first hint of pre-dawn blue is a lifetime away. This is the time of the deepest sleep, the time when the soul wanders furthest from the shore. The resilience of the medieval life is now your own. You have built your fortress, you have set your watch, and you have surrendered to the night. There is nothing left to do but to be, to breathe, and to rest in the heart of the stone. The final embers in the hearth give one last tiny pop, a sound so small it is almost a thought. Then, the room returns to its absolute, velvety silence. The darkness is your friend, a soft and heavy blanket that has been prepared for you through the centuries. You are safe. You are warm. You are part of the long, quiet story of the world. As the shadows of the castle merge into one, you let yourself drift fully into the dreamless, peaceful dark, carried by the strength of the stone and the softness of the wool, into the heart of the medieval night. The journey has ended, and the rest has begun. The cold is a memory, and the warmth is a reality. The stone is strong, and the spirit is at peace. Sleep now, held by the history and the silence, until the world wakes once more in the light of the new day.